Spider-Man is a right-wing objectivist.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Okay, this one's a little complicated, so let me explain. Spider-Man was originally debuted in 1962 with Amazing Fantasy 15, written by Stan Lee and drawn by Steve Ditko. However, as time went on and Spider-Man became more popular in his own book, Steve Ditko had a little more creative control. Ditko also created characters such as Doctor Strange, Squirrel Girl, and before he was acquired by DC, he created The Question for Charlton Comics. And if you know anything about The Question, you will absolutely understand why I said Spider-Man was an objectivist. Or at least, he originally was. After the popularity of Amazing Fantasy 15, Spider-Man got his own book. However, things began to quickly change behind the scenes, and the process of writing and creating Spider-Man became a little more complicated. And I have a full video covering that entire situation coming out soon, so stay tuned. But the most important thing to realize is Stan Lee was taking an active step back in the plotting and creating of the actual stories. During the Silver Age of comics, Stan Lee took a different approach to writing. Stan would come up with general concepts for a story, then send that off to the artists, who would have just a basic outline with no script and have to come up with the entire book on their own with no panel layouts, making changes to their artwork at the drop of a hat before sending it back over to Stan, where he would actually write the script and put in all of the words and shape the story around the artwork. And that's how Stan Lee was able to write basically every Marvel comic book coming out in the 60s. But he was being stretched too thin, so he had to take steps back further and further, until towards the end of Steve Ditko's run, he was basically writing all of Spider-Man, which means he was completely uninhibited and could put his own worldviews into the comic, and then Stan would have to figure out a way to snake around it. This became very evident in the final issue that Steve Ditko drew, Amazing Spider-Man issue 38, where local students are trying to get Peter Parker to join their protest, and he wants absolutely nothing to do with it. In fact, he's actually furious that he's even having to deal with these people. And Stan Lee had to twist this so Peter didn't seem so bad. This infuriated Steve Ditko, who was doing basically all of the legwork for Spider-Man and getting none of the credit. And you see, that didn't really sit well with Steve, who was an objectivist, meaning he only saw things in black and white, right and wrong, which through his artwork and story plotting he was actually trying to put onto Spider-Man as well, having him see absolutely no shades of gray in terms of morality. And due to the creative differences, he ended up leaving the book entirely, giving room for John Romita Sr. to come in, and Stan to fully take control back into his own hands. And Marvel is really ashamed of that part of Spider-Man's history. For instance, this man here, writer Al Ewing, decades later made Spider-Man apologize in a comic book for ever having thought that way in the first place, and made him say, "God, I hate myself." I'm absolutely not saying that Marvel was in the right for that. I'm also not agreeing with things being completely black and white in life. But to really put things into perspective on how Ditko saw things, the Mad Warlock himself, Alan Moore, has come out and said that he based Rorschach on Steve Ditko.